Welcome to Pencils and Lipstick. This is a podcast for indie writers. I'm Kat Caldwell, a short story writer, novelist, and book coach. Here on the podcast, we sometimes talk to guests about all things story, and sometimes it's just me giving you tips and tricks to making your writing better. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pencils and Lipstick. I'm Kat Caldwell, and this is episode 250 of Pencils and Lipstick. We're going to talk about a couple things today. We are halfway through December of 2024. I say this in case somebody in the future is listening to us. As you can see, I've once again rearranged where I sit in my office for you all. I'm trying to figure out the light, but I think I figured out the light. I just bought one of those ugly ring ones, which you don't have to see, but I have to see. But anyway, it is what it is. It's what I have to do. There's a couple, if you haven't seen them on YouTube, where I'm just literally sitting in the dark. So I am on YouTube. I know lots of people have thoughts on whether podcasts should be videos, but I think some people really like video. So if you want to see me or the guests, you can go to YouTube. It's at Pencils and Lipstick, and you can watch quite a few. We started putting video out about 6 months ago. It's funny that I say we. It's just me. I'm putting out videos about 6 months ago. So you can then like and subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow us on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. And if you haven't reviewed in a while, it would be really helpful if somebody would give some star reviews. Reviews are like the hardest thing ever for me. I feel like I think this goes into sales, and if you're a good salesperson, and I just struggle with reviews. I'm like slowly, very, very, very slowly getting reviews on my books. It doesn't matter really how many things that I sign up for giveaways and all this. It's difficult because for a giveaway, somebody's usually winning like 20 books. So, they have to decide which book to read first. I did a giveaway on Goodreads in the hope that I'll get a couple more reviews there. And some of those are like trickling in. I know I need to give them time to read it, but reviews are hard. I think kudos to those of you who have figured out the reviews. And just to encourage some of you, some genres are difficult to get reviews on. So, make your decisions wisely and on purpose. And I like to complain, but I have made my decisions on purpose, being in women's fiction and contemporary fiction, and those are just harder. Those are harder to get reviews on. So be okay with the slow. It's okay. But for the podcast, you guys can like and subscribe on YouTube. You can follow us, me. I don't know why I say us, me on any podcast app that you listen to. Just hit the follow button, give a review. Just stars reviews helps. It's a very small podcast, right? I love hearing from some of you. Every once in a while I'll get emails. It reminds me that people are listening, so that's fun. And seeing the review will remind me as well. There's a couple of writing episodes, podcasts out there, and it's just me. So if you guys could help me out and follow and subscribe and review, that'd be awesome. Also be here. Like, it's not a threat. Like, I'm not leaving. I enjoy doing this. So, but it would be fun for you to do that. Anyway, this is why I'm not a good salesperson. I start going on the caveats here. We're almost at the end of the year. I've talked to you guys a couple times now, about marketing, about being kind to yourself. And I think I'm going to continue to talk a little bit about that. Next week's episode is going to be a bit, about the new year and Merry Christmas. And maybe it'll come out after Christmas then. I don't know. I'm thinking. So the next episode will be a bit more about, preparing yourself for the new year, for 2025. Insane. I am speaking at a summit. I have to record this soon. And so I've been thinking a lot about how I have come to organize myself. Whether us like old millennials, I think we are, or Gen Xers, I don't know, whatever, sort of that 75 to 83 time frame there. we just sort of live in our own little bubble. And especially as women, I don't know really if it's undiagnosed ADHD, if it's the age that we are, right? And the point of life that we're in. But it seems that a lot of people are struggling to focus and to get things done and all that. So I'm gathering my thoughts on that. I'm going to be talking a lot about what I have done in the past that has worked, that hasn't worked, and how I do it now. And I kind of want to give you guys an inside special look into that before I record it. Still thinking about it. So today I want to talk to you guys about a couple of different things because we are in the midst of the Christmas spirit. And while some of you might be not very busy, I hear from a lot of you that you are very busy. I think you have holiday parties or just the anticipation of being with family, probably lots of things to finish up at work, probably kids being in choir and band concerts and maybe a play, and maybe you're part of that and maybe you love it, but maybe it's also driving you crazy. And so, I think the first thing that you have to decide really is, are you going to write for the next 2 weeks? And do you have to write for the next 2 weeks? I know that those sound like a little bit different and yet the same. Do you have to write? And are you going to write? And this goes a little bit into what I will be talking about at the summit. It's Monica Hayes Summit, and I'll have more information about that as it gets nearer. But, and as you guys know, I enjoy writing every day. And I use that sort of like in the context of, it's kind of what I try to do. It doesn't always happen, but I would enjoy sitting down and writing every day. But it doesn't always happen. And there are times in which I think you kind of have to look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that today it's not going to happen. Maybe it will tomorrow, or for the next 2 weeks, it's not going to happen. And this happened to me in October, where we were just traveling so much. And as much as I kind of wanted to write, I had to start telling myself I wasn't going to be able to about 2 weeks beforehand. And it's not like I believed myself. I still didn't believe myself. But funny enough, I ended up maybe writing twice in the span of 3 weeks, maybe a little less. But I think that I was better prepared for it mentally because I'd been telling myself that I wouldn't be able to, even though I didn't believe myself. So, yes, I think I talked to you guys just last week about if you don't write it, the readers can't read it, right? We can't expect people to anticipate a product that we're not working on. You have to write. You have to get the words out. You have to get the story out. That being said, when life is rough and busy, and there are other things that you should be being present in, it is okay to take a break. As Americans, if you've ever traveled or been in these circles where you're talking to people about how, in Europe they take vacation and Americans should learn to take vacation. And we sort of have this idea of like, it's bad that Americans don't use all of their vacation. But I was thinking about how most writers, especially if you work full time, expect to write during vacation. They're kind of like, I want to take the vacation to write, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. But it is possible that just as much as anyone else in any other job needs to take a vacation, it is possible that you need one, or that it's just going to sort of be imposed on you. So here in DC, a couple of my friends have had vacations sort of imposed and mandatorily given to them. And while they're not super happy about not being able to choose when they go on vacation, they've sort of embraced the idea of, well, I have to take the days anyway. And so I've decided to go to Paris or, go to Jamaica or whatever. And they're sort of, deliberately taking a vacation but it started out with their company forced them to. So maybe life is forcing you to, maybe family is forcing you to, the circumstances of Christmas. I think, especially as women, you can be more present in these family gatherings and this holiday season if you accept the fact that you might be being forced into vacation. And it could be good for you. It could be good to watch those Hallmark movies or the classics, or hang out with your kids or play the game or listen to music or observe your relatives. Create those different characters, observe human character and how they interact so that you can sort of add it to your story. You can really take in a lot of stuff, right? You don't have to like be silent by the pool. I mean, it's winter, so no one's at the pool unless you get to be that lucky person going to Jamaica, right? So, you're thinking about your story. It's always with you. So even if you're not writing, I always keep a notebook near me. But allow yourself to observe your relatives and maybe take that vacation. Just be present. I don't think that we need to feel bad about it. I used to feel bad about it, and I'm trying to encourage people to not feel bad about it. Sometimes you just can't write. But if you can write during the holidays, I mean, I know some people like it's Christmas is 2 days and then everyone leaves or they leave and they're back home and they almost have more time to write. And that's amazing, right? So with that, I was thinking about this idea of show, don't tell. So this is our little writing tip for the week. And this came to me because I watched a really terrible Hallmark movie. I can't actually even remember what it was called. But she was a pilot, and she got stranded on this island. Of course, it's called like Christmas Island, as you make up. But it struck me the way that she was using her facial expressions. When you're watching a show, it's not a terrible movie for like one thing. It's usually like compounded, right? I mean, it's budget. You can only get the actors that have so much experience and the writers that have so much experience, right? And so I honestly, I feel like I should be kinder because maybe it's new writers and they're learning. Maybe it's new actors and they're learning. So I feel like maybe I'm being too harsh, but it was cheesy. Okay, let's say that. Like it was cheesy, feel good, cheesy movie. And I was watching this actress's face and the way that they were trying to convey part of the story was through their body motions, right? Which is normal. But it was almost like over the top, like just too much. It ended up being quite irritating to watch her move her face a lot, it's like her trying to convey these emotions or her frustration. And it just wasn't like it wasn't there, right? It wasn't there. It was cheesy. It was, oof. And I was thinking about this book that I'm reading, which I won't mention, but it's not a bad book, but it does, the writer does tend to reiterate the emotion that is happening on the page already. In fact, she's a good enough writer that I know what emotion is coming, and what's irritating is the main character retelling me what just happened in her mind, in her thoughts, as the narrator when I already know, right? So it's kind of the opposite. Like she's actually writing it well so that I can see the character and they're not making these crazy faces at me overtly. So, but then she's reiterating it to me. And so show, don't tell, it sometimes I think for new writers or, a new being, again, like you've written 3 or 4 or less, fewer books, show, don't tell. It's a funny thing because yes, you do have to tell some things, right? Not everything can be shown. It ends up being purple prose and overwhelming and annoying. Sometimes you do have to tell things, but the point of show, don't tell is to try to, I think, push the writer in to this creativity spot where you're getting your characters to convey something as though they are actors with the most subtle terms possible to the reader, so that you don't have to then have the narrator say, and what she meant was that the class system in England is very bad, And actually, that's not even how her main character is saying it, but her main character keeps talking to me about the class system when I know perfectly well that that's what she wants to tell me because of the way that her characters are interacting. Okay, so she has done the shown really great, and then she tells. And please believe me when I say, like, I do this too. This is why you need an editor and beta readers. And, you need to have that eye. You need to develop that eye for your own editing. So what you really want from your characters, the reason that you want the thesaurus of, how to say eye rolling in a different way and how to say, smile in a different way, because it depends on what kind of smile it is, in that it's going to convey something to the reader that then you don't have to explain in words. Okay. So when you say leer, that's a different kind of smile, right? Like, when you're scowling, that's different than a frown. When you're pouting, that's different from a frown. Like, this is why we want to push us writers, right? All of us trying to teach and learn the skill. And we say show, don't tell, because we're trying to kind of compress down the amount of words you're using to convey the writer's thoughts on a social issue, the character's thoughts on what's happening right now, the emotions, right? All of these different things. And if you do it well enough, you won't have to keep repeating things to the reader. The reader is smart enough, right? We want to write in a way that tells the reader that we know they're smart enough to get this. And quite frankly, if they're not reading to get it, we don't need to worry about that. We don't want to explain things to the person that's kind of like reading it for kicks. We want to explain only enough for the intelligent reader, okay? So when you're writing out your characters' reactions and the way that they dialogue as well, can also do that. If you have a political statement kind of that you want to talk about, so like in this next historical romance, I talk a lot about the Protestant and the Catholic sort of squabble in each country in the 1800s on who's better and who's no good. And this book that I'm reading, she's talking about the social classes in England. So these are little, commentaries on the social dynamics, right? You can do that with dialogue. Most certainly. You need somebody who is lower class and upper class in the way that they interact, but also the way that they react to what the other person is saying, right? So this is where you pull out your thesaurus and you find a different way to say blush, or find a different way to show that they're uncomfortable, they're shifting, they're looking down, they're looking to the left, they're fidgeting, they're look at their watch, right? That's kind of, so let's use that. If you say, he looked at his watch, he wouldn't meet her eye, but instead, looked at his watch. You don't have to then continue on to have the narrator say, he really didn't want to be there anymore, right? Like, it was time for him to leave. He wanted to skedaddle. You don't need to say that, because we all know what it means to deliberately look at your watch. Or maybe he snuck a look at his watch, right? And so now we see that he's trying to not convey that to everyone else, but he actually is getting antsy and wants to leave. We know that because this is what we do, right? We do this as humans, and so we understand that person. And again, even if a reader doesn't quite get that, we don't want to write towards that reader, right? the show don't tell is writing towards the reader who is intelligently and actively engaged in your story. Okay. I think we have to keep that in mind. So when we're encouraging you to look for these different ways to say the same thing, that's what we're actually having you do, is to show, not tell. Does that make sense? I hope. Sorry, I had to cough. So I want you to think about that. Perhaps in the next few weeks, if you're going to write 1 or 2 more scenes before the end of the year, or maybe you're going to go back and look at what you have written, check your thesaurus. You can also check Stacy Juva's Looks and Gazes worksheet. It's pretty cheap. I mean, it's usually like $37 or something, and it's this huge PDF of organized by emotions. I can have a link in the show notes below. It's a great thing. There's also blog posts on the internet, kind of wherever you are, whatever works for you, and start to see if you can convey something that's happening without telling outright what's happening. And this is usually you're capable of doing this because the story's about this, right? Like, we've already heard about this. Now, in the very beginning of your story, you might have to talk about how, her friend is rich and she's not rich. And, maybe the friend says, let's go out for lunch, and they go to someplace that's very, pricey, and the narrator kind of has to tell the reader the situation that she finds herself in, right? So yes, introducing your characters, you're probably telling a little bit more. But from that moment on, literally, all you need to do is keep showing it. Show the discomfort, don't tell it anymore, okay? And that is one thing that is driving me insane about this book. It doesn't help, I think, that it's audio, and so I can hear it. Like, I already know this. Oh my gosh, you've already told me that it's hard. Okay, stop. And it's just reminding me that that is something that I should go back to and check out in my own writing. All right. So if you guys have any thoughts or questions about that, you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. We can talk about it. But before we go, we are ending, this year. It's possible that you have wanted to write more. It's possible that you wanted to write something different. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the confidence, bringing back the confidence. I don't know about you, but there are times as a writer, like at this time of the year, I walk into bookstores because I'm buying presents for people. And I just thought of this because the other day I walked in and instead of being very inspired by the bookstore, actually felt kind of defeated. And I wonder if I'm not alone in this, where you just think, I'm not where I thought I would be, right? And we talk a little bit about this almost every other episode, but I keep getting responses about it. And so I want to keep encouraging you guys. It is possible that you aren't where you want to be. And I can sympathize with that. When I see certain books out, really prominent, and I think, oh, it would be so much easier if my books were there, and then I wouldn't have to learn Facebook ads, and I wouldn't have to learn how to copyright my ad copy, and not copyright, but write my ad copy. I wouldn't have to, find out why I didn't sell anything today, but sold something yesterday, but why is this working and not this working? And I just want to write my book. We can really go down that rabbit hole, and I totally get it. And I think on one hand, it's a good sign that you still want this, that you still want to write and get your story out and put it there. But at the same time, everything happens in the time that it needs to happen, right? I think back when I started writing, and I wondered if I had written a first book breakout novel, because this happens, rare, but it could happen, right? In 2017, where would my life be like? Where would it be now? Would I have been able to write another book and another book, or would I have been locked down in fear of, I'm not actually sure what to write next? Because the truth is, while I'm really proud of my first book, I think I worked really hard on it, and I knew more than what I had known, 10 years before. I didn't know what I know now. Right. And so it was actually very difficult to write that book. It took years to write that book and to figure out the nuances of story. Even though I did sort of figure it out, my knowledge was still down here compared to where it is today. And on one hand, my knowledge from today helps me to move quicker, right? The experience helps me move quicker as well. But I'm not sure that I wouldn't have been paralyzed by realizing how little I knew, and that what were the expectations, right, of my next book or my next. Because it does happen where you have a breakout novel and then your second one gets completely panned. And that's not really that fair. Like, when I look at that, I think that it's that person has an innate talent and just needs a mentor to sort of help shape them, right? So things happen in the time that they need to happen. The truth is, in the arts, the majority of the people who even live a really healthy career life are not super famous. And so I think this idea is very American, in this like famous equals career, or equals having arrived, or equals you're good. Ugh, that's so scary, isn't it? Because we all know also, on the other hand, that famous people aren't always good, especially in America, where we make everybody famous. Case in point, some crazy news, in the last few weeks. But so please try to understand, as I try to understand myself, what is it that you believe for your career? So I know that the majority of the famous authors are probably really great people. I'm not saying anything about that. But do you think that you've only become successful if you are famous? If you are the one being talked about? Are you ready to be famous? Whatever that means? Or do you really believe that actually it might be better to go step by step into your author career, getting out your books, the books that you're proud of, having the time to make the decisions on purpose about the stories that you want to put out, and possibly the day that you are out on display in Barnes & Noble, it might be a little sweeter, right? Because it just took a little bit more work to be there. So that was my self encouragement that I wanted to share with you guys. And it's a good thing to do these exercises, right? To remind ourselves of where we were, to think and really question whether we wanted it to come faster, to question what we consider successful, right? Before we really make our plans for 2025. Just allow yourself to sit in that. And if you find yourself a little overwhelmed about where you are not yet, think about where you were a while ago, and allow yourself to really go through the emotions, right through it, question yourself, kind of play devil's advocate with yourself a bit, and then remind yourself that it might be a little sweeter if you have to work for it or wait for it. And, the other realistic point is that most artists and actors and writers are not famous, right? And maybe that's okay. Like, maybe we don't actually want to be noticed on the street all the time, because that actually sounds a little scary. But I have to admit, we all do kind of want those sales numbers. I mean, so let's just be honest, right? So I want you guys to leave 2024 believing in yourself, believing in your writing and your story, and believing in your books. Because the more that I pursue learning to sell my books, the more I realize you need to believe in yourself and in your books to sell them, because people can smell your lack of confidence from a mile away. All right. So we need confidence. We need to believe in our books. We need to believe that they are great stories, that they are the best story, and that they are completely worth reading, and they are worth 5-star. Okay. So believe in yourself. However you get there, whether it's through journaling, whether it's through thinking, whether it's through maybe taking a walk and talking about it with somebody, remind yourself and get back to that place of excitement for being a writer, excitement for your story, excitement for your books, and tell yourself, I am a good writer. My books are good, and I'm just going to keep selling them and writing them, right? All right. So that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I'm going to have some interviews and conversations more in the new year, and I will be putting out another episode before the end of the year to sort of guide us into the new year and all that it entails, of all that new goal planning and everything. I have a little bit different take than I had 7 years ago. So I want to share that with you guys. So until then, don't forget to subscribe or follow or review. Like, I guess subscribe and follow and review. And have a very relaxed and happy and wonderful week before Christmas. Don't get too bogged down by all the shopping. Maybe listen to a great book. Bye, guys.